We are saying these are all dead cells. Trichids are dead cells, xylem vessels are dead cells, xylem fibers are dead cells. But we are saying xylem parenchyma is living cell. Now we need tissue, this whole xylem tissue, various cells. Okay. Now we are saying some cells are dead and some cells are living. How you can tell that a cell is dead and a cell is living in the same tissue? That's the question. Got my question?
If the cell has lignin.
The cell has lignin. Lignin? What do you want to say? I didn't get you properly. If the cell has lignin?
Yeah.
Lignin, then it is I didn't get the answer in a proper way. What I'm asking is, in the same tissue, some cells are dead, some cells are living, we are saying. How we can say liquids are dead cells, vessels are dead cells, xylem fibers are dead cells, but parenchyma is living cell. How? The xylem tissue, we are having 4 different cells, isn't it? Yes, among the 4 different cells, trichids are dead cells, xylem vessels are dead cells, xylem fibers are dead cells. But only xylem parenchyma is a living cell. How you can say that these 3 are dead cells and this only is living cell?
Says, and ma'am, xylem parenchyma is the living cell and all the other cells are dead. Or trachees, xylem vessels and xylem fibers are dead as to provide tensile strength and rigidity to the plants. And xylem parenchyma, as we have discussed, its function is to store the food so that the plants can remain green and these 3 can function properly.
See, the answer is here only. So as Adam is saying, these 3 are giving only tensile strength to the plant. So they are dead. And Alifia said that they are having lignin, so they are dead. Other than that, what are these xylem tissue? What is this xylem tissue? This is a simple permanent tissue, isn't it? Or complex permanent tissue? What the whole xylem tissue? Complex permanent tissue.
Yes.
Isn't it? When you take the permanent tissue, what we gave as a definition of permanent tissue, the cells stop dividing and they will remain as dead, most of the cells, and perform particular function. Permanent tissue definition is that. Permanent tissue is nothing but when meristematic cells continue division, they'll settle down in particular places and the plant body as permanent tissue. Like xylem settle in the root and stem part and helps in transport of water and nutrients, isn't it? So here the trichids, vessels and fibers, they'll stop dividing. Only living tissues can divide now. Only living cells can divide now. So these cells will stop dividing and they'll remain like this, dead cells. But the parenchyma, it's a living cell. Isn't it? Parenchyma is a living tissue. When we talked about parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, we said parenchyma and collenchyma are living cells. Will continue division. But sclerenchyma will stop division and it become tough, hard and dead. Isn't it? So here if you see, I told this is the slide, a picture we have taken the bark or wood part of a stem. Isn't it? Did I mention that point? So here it's looking like a wood, no? Part of wood. This is all the dead cell tissue. Only the outer part is only the living tissue. Okay? So how do you conclude whether it is a dead tissue or living? Based on the cell division nature. Based on its activity. These 3 doesn't have any activity. They are just acting as containers. But the parenchyma, it is giving support, isn't it? The parenchyma, I'm telling the parenchyma gives the support. It's a ground tissue. So only the parenchyma is the living tissue in xylem. This is the 100 time or 1000 time probable bit in NEET. Every time, favorite bit for most of the exam paper setters. Xylem parenchyma, why it is only living cell, the whole xylem tissue.
Ma'am, can you please explain once more?
The whole xylem dead xylem tissue or the dead and living part?
Ma'am, dead and living part.
Okay. So when you take the xylem tissue, you're having 4 cells. Okay. Tracheids, xylem vessels, xylem fibers, xylem parenchyma. Okay. Now, when you take tracheids, xylem vessels, and xylem fibers, all the 3 are dead cells. Whereas xylem parenchyma is the only living cell in whole xylem tissue. So here the point is why these 3 are called dead cells and only xylem parenchyma is called the living cell. Okay. Now when you take the tracheids or xylem vessels or xylem fibers, all the 3 will remain as containers. Containers means what? They will not perform any function. See, at your home you will be having different containers. Do they have their own activity? No. We'll pour something in the container and we'll keep it aside. Isn't it? Like the water bottles and all. So here the tracheids vessels, they act as containers through which the water and the nutrients will move. That's all. Okay. Even the fibers are also dead. These are the fibers which will give support. They just act as support to the tracheids and vessels. All these 3 cells, tracheids, vessels, fibers, will not show any kind of active cell division. That's why they are called dead. Okay. But when you take the parenchyma, the xylem parenchyma, the outermost layer shows division. Or in other words, you can say it stores food material and makes the 3 remaining elements intact. Because all these 3 cells are dead and not performing any activity. So those cells has to be kept intact. No? So for that purpose, the xylem parenchyma will be surrounding all these 3 elements. And it is the only living cell in xylem tissue which stores the material of food and makes the dead cells intact. This is how the xylem tissue possesses only xylem parenchyma in active states. That's why living. The remaining 3 elements, tracheids, vessels, and fibers, they are not showing any activity. They are just containers. So they are dead cells. Okay. So only parenchyma is the living cell in xylem tissue. Clear, Bhumika?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if this part of xylem tissue is okay for you people, then we go for the next tissue, phloem tissue. Okay. Now here, phloem tissue is also a complex permanent tissue. Means what? It is a heterogeneous tissue made up of cells. You are having seed elements, companion cells, fibers, parenchyma. Okay. Now, if you see the similarity between xylem tissue and phloem tissue, the fibers and the parenchyma cells are in common. In xylem, you are having xylem fibers, phloem fibers. In xylem, you are having xylem parenchyma. In phloem also, phloem parenchyma. So, almost similar cells you will find in xylem and phloem. What are those cells? Fibers and parenchyma. Okay. Now, the difference between xylem and phloem basically in structural concept is seed elements and companion cells. There in xylem, we'll have tracheids and vessel elements. isn't it? So here in phloem, we are having sieve elements and companion cells. So this is the structural difference between xylem and phloem. When you take the functional difference, what xylem will do? Xylem will transport water and nutrients from bottom of the cell to the tip of the plant. But when you take phloem, see, if you take xylem, what it is doing, it is taking up the water, transporting it in upward direction. Only in one direction it is transporting. Xylem. But when you take phloem, this is the tissue which will transport the prepared food material from the leaf to other parts, means to the stem and to the roots, and the water and nutrients which are there in the stem part, that also will be transported to the stem part and the root part. So it's kind of bidirectional. This is one direction, this is other direction. This is the functional difference between xylem and phloem. Xylem will transport water and nutrients in only one direction. But phloem, it will transport nutrients and water in two directions. How this is happening, let's see. Okay. Now, first we'll discuss about the sieve elements and companion cells. Then you'll get an idea how the phloem is functioning in two ways. See here, the word sieve. What does mean by word sieve?
Sieve in Hindi, if I say it's chhanni.
छन्नी छन्नी में बहुत सारे
There are small perforations in it.
yes yeah छन्नी we used to filter something, isn't it? Something looks like this. I'm not perfect at छन्नी drawing. Okay, so here how this छन्नी looks like, isn't it? So this basically for filtration process. What छन्नी will do? The sieve will do filtration. Yes. Now, here if you take the sieve tube element here, this is the sieve tube element, the center one. Okay, this whole part is the sieve tube element. Now you find the sieve-like material at the middle of this element. See, this almost looks like this. See, having some pores. Okay, so here what happens is, if you take plants are autotrophs. Why? Because the leaf will perform photosynthesis and it prepares food, isn't it? So here we call leaf as source of food in plant. Okay, remember the word source of food in plant is leaf. Now at the tip of the plant you will have leaves and the branches will have leaves, they will prepare food. Then the prepared food, it won't remain in leaf itself, isn't it? It has to be transported to the whole plant, to the trunk, to the root and everything, all different parts of the plant. This food has to be transported. So how this food gets transported? Okay, so here the role of phloem comes here. These are the sieve tube elements which will help in transport of food from the source to the sink. Source means what? Where the food is prepared, nothing but the leaf. Okay? Sink means what? The parts, the other parts of the plant is the sink. What are the other parts of the plant? The branch part, the root part. Okay, so all those are called as sink. The root, the stem, branches, everything will be sink part. So from the source, food has to be transported to sink, which will be carried out by phloem. Okay, so in the phloem, especially the sieve tube elements, Tube, again we are using tube, means what? It is a container-like thing. Okay? So the tube-like element will have seals. Okay? Through them, the food will be transported to sink, means to various other parts of the plant. Now, beside the seed tube element, thanks. What? Alifia, time is up. Yeah, I know that thing. Bear with me for a few seconds. We'll wind up this topic, then complete the session. Yeah? Okay. So here, when you see the seed tube element, you're having cells beside the seed tube element. So these are the cells called as companion. Companion means what? In general, companion means what? Companion means a friend, a supporter, isn't it? Companionship, good companionship, we usually say. What does that mean? Good supporting friend, isn't it? So here to the seed tube element, you have some cells which will support them, called companion cells. Okay? So these two cells will help in transport of food